it all falls back to that. And the people that don't panic and work the problems, usually that's usually the more successful route.
You're listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again to the AV-IT Amplifier. As always, my name is Ryan Gray, and I am your host. And we have a good one for you today, a special guest that crashed an earlier episode, and so technically a second appearance on the program. But someone that that has been on the list for a long time, but and I've kept putting it off because I feel like once we have an episode featuring Jon Hamilton, it's all downhill after that, right? This is the apex of I think where this show can go. So, Jon, thank you so much for being with us today. Please tell everybody, who are you and what do you do?
Well, no one, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Now, when you say crashed, I was an invited crash. So I
yes,
crash.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So Jon Hamilton. I am the Senior Audiovisual Manager for Emory University School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. And so by that aspect, School of Medicine entails research and everything. So I handle all the research, and I do some stuff for the health sciences schools, and I do some consulting around. So I've started my career in audiovisual in 1984. Mm-hmm. So George Orwell, the whole thing, take over the world. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's been it. So I've done this for a long time. So that's it.
That's pretty good. Well, I thank you for being here. And yes, no, you came on the 100th episode because I did include that as an invitation. And the coolest part is you said, I didn't know I was going to be on it. I was just coming to support you.
Yes.
That was I'm just saying, so you can, whatever your exterior is, I think there's a really soft core underneath there. Wouldn't you agree?
I'm not sure what my exterior leads people to.
Yeah, exactly.
I talk about this all the time with my wife. It's a big joke now, me and my wife. So I've been married 40 years this year. So when I say my wife, I mean my entire life.
Yeah.
So when I reference that, it's a different reference than we're newlyweds. We always joke that I'm the giver, and it's like, I've got this nickname as being the giver, and she just laughs and just laughs and laughs. But I don't know, everybody would talk about, what you want to be left with or how you want to, what do you want? And I keep telling people, all I want to be is the solid guy that you knew. Yeah. Is that I, tell the truth. I don't pull many punches. I talk what I want. And so sometimes that comes off as very aggressive, and I don't see it that way, but I like the things I like, and I will go full bore for it, and unapologetic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so I'm going to tie that answer kind of back to work in AV because, like you said, you're in that relationship. You're a giver, and trying to do that, you want to be seen as and so you're articulating even through talking about how you want to be honest, right? Like, I like what I like, and I put it out there. Doing audiovisual, especially in higher ed, is a service industry. Right, we are there to enable other people to accomplish things. We don't exist to just have cool classrooms. We exist that classrooms and research facilities do other things. So do you feel like, that being good at AV and higher education kind of requires that feeling of, I want to give back to this thing. I want to be seen as the good guy who was there, when people needed it.
I mean, I think doesn't everyone? I mean, really and truly, doesn't everyone? I come back to this is like I've always explained, I've always been in the service industry. I was a service tech. I was a service manager. I mean, everything I do is the service industry. I actually think everything everyone does is the service industry. Is you're serving something, yourself, the greater good, whatever it is. I mean, you know, 80% of the people like just an easy life and won't have an easy life. 10% are Gandhi or whatever, and the other 10% are serial killers. So, I mean, pretty much you fall into that category somewhere. Um, but so I worked as an integrator and I ran a division of Xerox Audiovisual before I left and everything was very aggressive, make money, whatever. Well, I spent my entire career, I mean, let's see, I was there 27 years, being bought out and stuff, different companies. But, I tell people, I got up in the morning, I hunted down a dinosaur. I killed a dinosaur, I drug it home, and my family ate.
Yeah.
Spent my entire career like that. I came to higher ed and really and truly going back to what you're talking about. I really wanted to try to maybe give back a little bit, help some areas. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wanted to make money. I wanted to have a living, but I was like, now I'm in education. I can help people that are, doing whatever. So I started there. I was in the HR office the day I started and stuff, and they were like, oh, whatever, they're talking to me about stuff. They handed me this basket of ducks and bunnies. Okay, so I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So this is going to be an easy gig, stuff, got ducks and bunnies. And so the person was like, oh, excuse me, I got to step out for a second. I'm like, okay, so cool. They came back and they're like, what happened? What happened? And I was like, I said, I went ahead and killed the ducks and bunnies. That's what I'm going to take home and feed my family. I was like, they're used to eating dinosaurs, and they were like, no, no, no. The point is to keep the ducks and bunnies alive. So my whole mindset had to change. And so, yes, I do feel like giving back. I do feel like, if my team builds a very easy, very usable environment, it makes it easier for learning. It makes it easier for collaboration. Whatever you're doing is that, that's what I consider giving back.
Yeah.
I also tell all of my team, we're Secret Service. Okay. All we are is at the back of the room. No one ever sees us. When the thing dies, we dive across and take the bullet and get things back right.
I love it.
So once again, you're the nicer version. I'm thinking Secret Service taking a bullet. When I tell people, it's like, oh yeah, when this person walks across the street and gets hit by a bus, what are we going to do if they have all this knowledge? And then my boss is like, maybe you want to use, they win the lottery and they leave. Why does it always have to be death involved? So very aggressive. Once again, it goes back to the dinosaur thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But you articulate that and this is why I love talking to you about this stuff, because you have great stories and illusions. And forgive me for using, but it's like it's almost like a sermon at times, right? You're advocating, you're talking about something, you've got passion behind it, and you've got object lessons, these visual ways of describing this mindset of those sorts of things, and this duality of like, no, we're supposed to be here, keep the ducks and bunnies alive. This is a different thing, but there is a reality on the ground, which is, in the long run, we're going to be the ones standing in the background, and if everything's great, no one's ever going to know we were there. But that's still part of why it's fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the whole point. You can fluff it up any way you want to. So in the pro environment that I came from and everything, it's just like, I mean, once again, I'm going back to very aggressive. I've been cussed out by the best of them. I mean, whatever, just annihilated. Phone call after phone call, or brought in, stuff. You're not doing this, whatever. And then when I came to work at Emory, so this would be my 14th year at Emory. There's only been one person that ever aggressively came after me.
Right.
And that guy ran part of healthcare. And so he was from the world of that. And it was just like, and I was like, oh, I felt right at home. This guy
Yeah,
shared me a new one. And I'm like, okay, we're good. I know how to handle that.
that.
I don't know how to handle someone stroking my feelings, and making me feel better and stuff, so yes, at the end of the day, you talk about the analogy or whatever, but when things go wrong, you're going to take all the blame.
Right.
You're the Secret Service. You're standing back there. President cannot be shot on your watch. You're going to take that money. So you can smooth it over and call it anything you want to, but you need to be prepared to take the bullet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not that mindset, in my mind, if you're not that mindset and you're not in that attitude of, I will take the worst of it and I will get nothing for the best of it.
Right.
If you're that person, you'll be successful in the service industry. You'll be a great guy. You might not make any money. You might not ever get promoted, but you won't get fired.
Yeah. But also, it's a very protective sort of thing, right? Like you may not, but you are likely to nurture amazing things that will happen in the environment that you've made and are protecting people in. You know what I'm saying? That you're protective of their success. Even if, like I said, the credit, when an amazing medical breakthrough comes from Emory University, rarely at the bottom of the article does it say, and also Jon Hamilton and his team for all the AV stuff that worked.
Absolutely.
But it wouldn't happen without those things.
Yeah. Like I said, the duality of it all, and everything. And so I don't know, service industry is serving.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. So, is you can have a calling. Once again, I go back to the whole Gandhi or whatever. I've only found, I think, 2 lines of occupation that are callings, and that's the clergy and doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Is that those people do stuff really to serve humanity?
Yeah.
A greater good, whatever. Everyone else works for a paycheck. Those kind of people. There's an oncologist that works at Emory, and he is the dean of education in the School of Medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and he cares. I mean, I almost can't talk with him. I mean, he's the greatest guy, and he cares. I mean, he honestly cares how you feel and what you and. Man, it makes me uncomfortable.
That's pretty good. Okay, so let me challenge you. I'm going to ask you a question on that because I have said something similar to that at times, but I have included in that in the past teachers. And it's easier to think of it in terms of people who have a calling. It's easier to think of it in terms of like, elementary, kindergarten, and second grade, especially in places where, like I'm in Arizona, and you don't make a whole lot of money being a second grade teacher, but they care, right? There's an emotional aspect to it. So how do you? But where in higher ed and in other places, maybe that sort of role of teaching and education doesn't feel the same way because working with children and adults is a little different. So how would you relate, working at the intersection of medicine and education? Do you see educators in sort of that same calling, or that has not been your experience?
To a certain extent, it has. But I've seen more people leave education,
Mm-hmm.
just political wins, pay, whatever it is. I've also, in my opinion, middle school teachers.
Yeah.
Now, all the teachers that might watch this, all 2 people that might see this podcast.
Wait, 2? We're going to get another one?
Yeah, we might.
Wow.
One of them is a teacher. Please don't get up. I have found middle school, the worst, the absolute worst is kids are now trying to find themselves and rebelling at that middle school age. And it's so tough of an environment. So someone that's sticking it out there, probably.
Yeah.
Elementary school, I have found that, And I'm not belittling anything or talking about, I've just found something that really like kids.
Yeah.
You know, they really enjoy kids. They really do things, you know, it's like they really like, you know, ABCs or whatever in elementary school. And they're like, okay, I'm doing this, you know, and I'm doing whatever it is. Middle school is, I would think, you know, like I said, burnout level of that and everything. And then high school, I think things start settling back down again, you know, and people are, you know, the students are starting to prepare for college and they're getting a sense of, you know, being closer to an adult and everything.
Right.
And so, like I said, so it depends on where they're at.
Yeah, that's
know.
interesting.
You know,
'Cause,
I've
yeah,
never
like
found a doctor
yeah,
that hates people.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. You know, so like I said, pretty uniformly, if you find a doctor, they care about people and society and all this stuff. And the same thing with clergy, you
Mhm.
know, but middle school teachers, how about that?
Yeah.
Middle school teachers.
Exactly. It's that same thing I've thought of as I've seen them going like, this has to be a calling because otherwise I don't think anybody would put up with what you're
Yeah.
putting up
And
with
like I said,
here.
that's just my opinion
Yep.
and my observation of teaching.
Yeah. Well, that's why we bring people on the show is to get their opinions and observations, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, direct the complaint letters to them instead of the show. And it all
Absolutely,
works out great.
absolutely. Bring
Yeah.
them on. I've got nothing to defend that with than just observation.
Perfect. Exactly. I love it. Okay. So, you know, you gave a little of your history, how long you've, you know, like you've been at Embry for a long time. You're in, you know, working for an integrator before that. You've been in and around the industry a long time. You've seen a lot, and you're one of those people that like when something is happening or it seems new or there's a rumor of X, Y, and Z, it feels like you have this experience that goes, yep, I know, but I've seen stuff like this before. I've seen that happen before, and you can return people to kind of a grounded place. So are you yet ready to be crowned like the godfather of audiovisual?
No, absolutely not. Not even close. I mean, the whole, uh, I'm going to use another analogy because I talk in a lot of analogies.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
love it.
paramedics, EMT. Okay. When you stop at a crash site, you can never panic.
Mhm.
Okay. You've got to come in and you've got to work the problem. And most of the time in business environments and changing environments I run into, just change in general.
Mhm.
You notice what the saying that everyone says, you know, is the only constant is change. Is the person that does not panic usually comes right out.
Mhm.
So technology changes. We can't get this to work. We can't. It's like when you start watching people panic,
Mhm.
is you're like, okay, then this is just knee jerk. This is whatever. Work the problem. Is there a problem? Do I need to? You know, you try to keep your finger on the pulse of things. And I guess so. The only big thing I could say from that is that you don't see me panic. And so, you know, if things are changing or money's coming, money's going, technology's changing, like don't panic through it. You know, is I started my career working on overhead projectors and thermofax machines.
Right.
So overhead projector, to the two people that are watching this, you know, was a light bulb and a transparency laid on there. I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking 70s, you know,
It was
80s.
just above like hand shadow puppets. That was
Well,
one
it
step
was a
past that.
good hand shadow
You could
puppet.
also do that. That's true. Yes.
You know, and the thermofax machine is what made the slides, you know, and
Mhm.
stuff like this. And so, you know, then it's like, oh, you know, we're going to have a projector on a cart that we're going to put. Well, what are we doing with our slides? Where did that all go? How are we going to teach our class, or
Mhm.
whatever it is? And it was just like, you know, it'll figure its way out. Just, you know, just kind of hang on and roll with
Mhm.
it, and it'll figure its way out. So, you know, I like to hang out with people that think that same way.
Mhm.
I enjoy the company of people that don't panic, that do whatever. And I think that's where it's got more back to me. And you talk about Godfather of AV. It's just, you know, I've just been around for a long time. You know, I know a lot of people and I don't panic, you know, and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, usually people, you know, when they see all the panic, they're grabbing for a life preserver,
Right.
you know, somewhere. And I like to be, you know, the person that's standing still.
Yeah. The calm the calm center in the thing. It reminds me of a oh, it's not the same one, the Mr. Rogers but quote of like, when you see something bad happening, look for the helpers in the group or whatever, right? Those that, are seem not affected by what's around them, but it's because, to your point, like they're by like see, I'm not panicking. There's almost an acceptance. Okay, I accept something's happened, and now I can move and I can act because I'm choosing not to process that at that time. I don't know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but there again, I mean, it falls into a lot of things. People call, like I'm more of a black and white guy. There's not a lot of gray areas. It's just like you're in or out.
Hmm.
You can't put one foot in the boat and go for a boat ride while one foot's on the dock.
Right.
You're going to have to get in the boat or stay on the dock. Not saying one's better than the other, but is it's like, there are certain facts. It's when you run into things, there's certain facts that are going to stay there. That boat will float across the water, that dock will not. You make your decisions off of that, and you try to, I mean, what happens, I think, when you get older and you've done it for a while, is your decision making becomes faster. You've seen these things a little bit more and you're like, whatever, but we've hung out after hours a few times and stuff. So I never will go, oh, I can't be involved in that. I'm like, no, let's get involved and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I enjoy, you know, there's not, I don't look at everything from a negative standpoint going in or whatever, but I always do look at things from a cost factor.
Yeah.
This, if you do this, what's it going to cost you? If you can afford the price and you want to do it, then jump in. You can't
Right.
afford it, don't jump.
Right. And there is kind of a like you said, like acceptance of the situation and then make your decision. You know what I'm saying? Which can be difficult when there's change, when there's hard decisions people get stuck in, I don't like what's happening. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. This is different. You know what I'm saying? And being
Think
able
about it.
to just shortcut, accept it, and then make a decision and move.
Well, watch any of political movies, what Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy wasn't going, oh, this guy's falling, what should I do? I mean, someone had to, at the end of the day, go, boom,
Yeah.
I'm making this decision. So once again, you're talking about the president of the United States was in a service industry at that point. He
Mhm.
was serving the American public in the best interest of the United States or whatever it is. So good or bad political situation, I'm just saying, it all falls back to that. And the people that don't panic and work the problems,
Mhm.
usually that's usually the more successful route.
Right. Nice. Okay. So if um so obviously if you were the question coming is what your advice for people coming into or new to AV. So obviously, for looking at what their career, time frame might look like. What obviously one piece of advice would be what you've been talking about. Don't panic. Got it. What's the next food? Taking your experience that helps you make decisions and be where you are. What else would you impart to people who are say in their third year in the industry?
Yeah. Well, part of it depends on where you're at. I mean, if you're in AV sales, there's a different sales Bible there, that you would go through. If you're in AV service, there's another. If you're an installer or you're a project manager, I mean, there's a few different angles.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I always go back to is try to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Learn. Learn, and this could go into any industry or whatever. So I tell people all the time is I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the smartest person on this call. Whatever it is I, you know, I try to know enough about the subject matter that I'm involved in to know whether people are lying to me or not.
Yeah.
Okay. There are experts out there and everything. And if you decide to be that expert, go for it. Become the Crestron programming god. I mean, write whatever you want to, learn whatever you want, and become that. If you're going to do management and you're going to run a department, or you're going to need to know some stuff, and then you're going to use that person as a crutch. Is that person is going to be another tool you figure out how to do, but you need to have that Crestron programmer come into your office and him go, I can't do that because X and Y don't hook together and won't do this. And you're like, I've seen X and Y plugged together, so that can't be the reason. So you need to know enough to where you can call BS on what's coming back. That, I think, is the key to doing the management part. If you're going to do, like I said, programming, installation, whatever it is just learn as much as you can. Pay attention, understand what's going on, be able to talk intelligently about what's happening, and learn it, use it, and understand that you do that. There's a value there. Don't underestimate your skills. Don't Is get that knowledge and come into somebody and you go, look, this is how it is. This is what's going to happen. Make those decisions that you need to do. So that's what I say. Once you get the knowledge, is learn to stand on it.
That is good advice, because I think even people who like, I have the knowledge, but you can always see somebody you think has a little more, or you walk into a room with decision makers and you're not sure, like that encouragement of be confident in what you know and then stand on it, use it, and influence things because of that knowledge and know-how.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a subject matter expert and then people talk you out of it, then are you the subject matter expert?
Great line. Absolutely.
So, I mean, is there a God? Is there not a God? I mean, if someone is a devout atheist, are you ever going to change their mind that there's a God? How much time are you going to spend on that? But does that mean you don't believe there's God? I mean, so you need, I don't know. I'm big into, you need to know yourself and you need to follow through on your beliefs and how you do things without being an ass. I mean, there's no reason you've got to be a prick about it. And not all people have to agree with you, and they don't have to be your enemy if they're not. So
that's awesome.
Why can't we just all get along?
I know. Well, I've heard that before, but no, sometimes the best advice is actually sounds pretty straightforward. Like, it's like, if you're the subject matter expert, how do you get talked out of that which you are the expert of, and turn that into like, yes, no, I am here because I am that expert, and people are counting on me to hold the line on best practices here and that sort of thing. So that's great advice.
Like I said, if you end up with someone in there that's like changing your mind, then maybe you need to go back out, find that person, or study up on what that was and find maybe they were right. Maybe just because you're subject matter expert doesn't mean you can stop. I mean, things are changing all the time,
No, by definition, I think everyone would agree, especially in technology, right? Subject matter expert is a constantly changing, rolling, and improving. Yes, you will never, it is, it's one of those, like, it's the goal and it's never going to be reached. You can never actually be the true subject matter expert because it's going to move faster than you can.
Well, and not unless, like if you work for a manufacturer, and you're like, we make this camera and I know everything there is to know about this camera and I can teach about this camera. Great. Okay. Well, when that goes out of life and the next camera comes on, what are you going to do? Now, they're to college, it's like, okay, I know how our stuff runs, but I don't know how the, college over in Nevada runs. I mean, I'm not there, I'm not doing that. So I can explain to you some of the things about higher ed. There's some things that are pretty generic. But then I think, as part of HEPMA, once again, they did a Canadian road show a few weeks ago, and the guy who was running came back and was like, Canada is not the U.S. when it comes to higher ed. So he was like, ooh, we might need to learn something else, about how they handle things and stuff. So, I always think about that.
That's awesome. Well, man, you have been able to pack a ton of wisdom and advice into a half hour here for people.
Oh, wow. We're already at half an hour?
You see how fast a half hour goes? You know what I'm saying? but that's about an average person's commute for people who drive. So it makes a very good length for a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Sounds like you've done this before.
Yeah,
Like 101 times.
yeah, exactly. 101, buddy. I love it. Okay, so I'll preemptively say thank you for coming back for week 2, which will be awesome because it'll let us continue this conversation so that people can have another commute along with you. But in the meantime, if people wanted to find and get connected to you on social media or other places and continue to learn from your wisdom, how would they find you?
You can hit me on LinkedIn. It's just Jon Hamilton, whatever. I don't even know what the address is, but I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good way. You can always just email me, john.hamilton@emory.edu.
Nice. Well, I advise everybody to do so. Jon is a great person to know, and he knows a lot of people. So he's a good person to get you connected with other people. Jon, thank you so much for your time and energy today.
It was good being here.
Thank you for listening to the AV IT Amplifier. Tune in next week for more with today's guest. It'll be great or your money back. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.